I would like to welcome Adam Gubman to the Amani Experience podcast. Welcome.
Hey man, I'm so excited to be here. We got a fun day planned.
Yes, we do. So where we are right now is we're on campus at Cal State Fullerton, and we're going to have a whole day's worth of activities with the students in Mahalo School of Business and Economics. But first off, tell everyone where you grew up.
I grew up in Orange County.
Orange
Spent
County.
a little time in Minneapolis.
see.
7 years in Minneapolis and my childhood here, and came back here for high school, and I had the whole like 90s ska band, like post-punk experience here, complete with lots of long evenings spent in Santa Ana at the Galaxy, which is, what's that place called now?
I don't know. We have to go look it up.
It's a cool club. I was there recently. I can't remember, for some indie band, but yeah, man, I grew up playing jazz bands and ska bands and marching band. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah. Show choir too, I heard, right?
Man, who told you? Who told you?
Did a little research.
So I was in the show choir band, so I don't know if that's better or worse, but it was a thing, and I loved it. But I learned a lot from those times. So yeah, I'm a local kid. I went to college at Long Beach State.
Yeah.
I looked at other schools, and I actually stayed here for a girl. It didn't work out, by the way. Ended up with somebody else. But I did look at Berkeley, and I looked at like Indiana State, Chapman, and Cal State. Like Long Beach was a great program for me.
Nice.
Conservatory style.
Cool.
Still have great friends there. Went back and spoke there a couple months ago. So
Right. We're happy to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
What instruments did you play growing up?
I've always been a piano player. So I started when I was like, I think 6 or 7, and I started writing just about the same time I started playing, and I think I always sort of gravitated towards the creative side of it. I mean, I studied classical music,
Right.
and I studied jazz, and I studied the technical stuff, but my head got more into the geek side of things. So back in the day, as soon as I got my hands on a keyboard, my grandfather put me on deluxe music construction set on the Amiga computer,
Yes.
and that was like 1984 or 5. I was like 5 or 6, and clicking in notes going, hey, look, I'm writing music. And he was like, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know. I said, but I want to do more of it. So then I started taking piano after that, and I play a little trumpet too, and I sing when I have to. I'm actually the highest paid white rapper in Ladera Ranch, where I live. Believe it or not, because Disney has me rapping on these super cheesy things that I write for them, and hand percussion. And then I started picking up all these ethnic woodwinds lately.
Okay.
And I love them, Native American flutes and some things from India and some things I can't even pronounce. Mostly because it's expensive to hire woodwind players that are amazing, and a lot of times I need just little rips and little things so I can figure it out myself. On guitar too, I can't play guitar, but I can pick it up and do 3 things, and that's sometimes enough to get me through what I need. So yeah.
Cool. If we're going back in the day, I know when you were really young in your career, tell us what it was like working with Carole King and Michael Bolton.
Oh my gosh, how did you even know? Did I tell you that? Where
You
you
did
from?
not tell me
Oh my
that.
goodness, dude, you are going deep on the net. Okay, so boy, oh boy, this is such a long story, but I'll just touch on this. So, Carole King, man, what an experience that was. And, for me, my takeaway, and I'll tell you what my takeaway was, and I'll tell you a little bit of the story.
Sure.
Is that was the first time as a young, budding producer, professional musician, knowing what I wanted to do, that I had an interaction with another professional that was emotionally on point, and that was conscious of the way I felt about the situation, and that spoke to my vulnerability at that age, and I left going, oh my God, Carole King is just she was already a monster of a writer and a singer, but what a human being, and that sort of started to change my trajectory on the way I saw other people in the industry and the way that I saw the humanity of what this is. And I always felt like there was this weird spiritual connection between what we do and what people receive from us in music. But, a lot of that really is how do you connect with other human beings, and how are you treating other human beings, and how is that an active part of your business? How do you make the human connection between you and your clients, or you and the folks that you interface with on a daily basis? How do you make it about the relationship and not necessarily about, making money, which is important. But when the relationship's strong, the money comes after. So let me back up a second, because I go on these tangents where I get excited about like what it really means when you bring that up. But so I was working for this producer. I had done some cold calls, and this was like in the days where it must have been like 1998. So internet wasn't like super hot as far as connecting with people.
Right. And
most of us were just like trying to figure out how to really use it as a business tool at that point. I was like 18 years old, and so I'd send a bunch of emails out saying, hey, producer so-and-so that I randomly Googled, because you could do that. Google was like Yahoo search back then, that I randomly Yahoo'd or whatever. Are you looking for an assistant? I'll drive wherever to come and hang out with you. And after maybe 50 of those emails, which isn't very many, I got a response back by this guy, CJ Vanston. And CJ, who still is a working producer and a working keyboard player, plays with Toto and plays with Spinal Tap, and he introduced me to those guys. It was a crazy time for me. Being so young, I took it for granted, but that's another story. And CJ said, come down to my studio and let's have coffee. And I did. And that's how all these great things start, with people saying, hey, come over, just hang out with me. Because if you can take that, like, if you have 20 minutes to show someone that you're not a total jerk and that you're passionate about this gig and there's some connection between the two of you, like I hate to use that term, but there's like a warm connection, like a warm market. That's such a businessy term, but really if there's like something that you two are both passionate about, or something that you two have both experienced that you can share in, it creates that sort of interlocking puzzle piece that is the difference between you having a long relationship with somebody. And this is personal stuff too. This is making friends. This is like, your local coffee barista. This is like anybody in your life that you have some sort of like a relative personal connection to, that they become an interlocking puzzle piece in like the complex web of your own life that should be built off of actual relationships. And so when I went there and I met him, I'm like, wow, we have some things in common. Like we like some of the same bands. Wow, like these 70s bands, and Carole King was one of them, and these folk bands that he loved, and I loved them too. And he was geeking out about production, and I was geeking out about production. And so he said, why don't you just take this room upstairs, move your gear here, and you can work here, and I won't make you get coffee, and I won't make you like do stupid shit that like a lot of interns do. You're gonna be here in the studio with me doing fun stuff. And I was like, yes, I want to do that. Again, 18, did not understand what I was getting into, right? I was like super stoked, and I showed up, and some of the first gigs that we had were like with Christopher Guest and Greg Ladani, God bless his soul, and he's passed away since then, but what a wonderful producer. He had the studio next door, and I got to meet him and talk to him a lot, and I remember him coming in one time and going, oh, you should hear this Alanis song. I got the bass sounding so good, and everybody was freaking out. We all went next door and heard it, and I'm like, I don't hear any difference between what he did before, but my ears were really tuned to it back then. But everybody's excited about the bass, so there was a thing.
What song was it?
I don't remember, man. And this is the thing, is like when I was working on this stuff, I was kind of like in that 18-year-old zone out mode where you don't really know what you're in,
yes.
Right? Like you take that for granted. You're not really quite mature enough. No offense to any 18-year-old listeners, but your mind is just not developed enough sometimes to really connect the dots between what you're experiencing and how that's going to affect you in the future. So I squandered a lot of those opportunities, not knowing back then that it was going to be important later on in my life. Yeah. But anyway, so one time we had Carole, Miss King, in the studio, and she brought her Bill Clinton phone, and this Bill Clinton phone was on a lucite block, and she's like, you don't want to call Bill Clinton? I'm like, no, I do not want to call Bill Clinton, but it's a really nice offer. And we were like laughing and stuff. And she's like, well, we can, because this phone, you pick it up, it's a satellite phone. We can call him anytime we want.
Amazing.
It was amazing. It was really cool. It had the presidential seal on it. It's just really weird, right? And so they were working on, CJ was producing and co-writing a song with Carole for her Christmas album or Christmas offering that year. And I hung out there and I didn't really do much. I just hung out. And at the end of it, she hugged me and she said, having you here meant a lot to me and the rest of the crew, and you were available for us when we needed it, and we couldn't have done this without you. Whether or not she meant it or not, she took the time to make that connection to me.
Yes.
And it felt good. And there was a lot of folks that we worked with, Michael Bolton was funny because he would come in and he'd want everybody out of the room, and then he'd I don't know. He's just like a dude's dude, right? Like way broy, and I just wasn't that energy, and so I have a lot of respect for him, but it wasn't quite the same thing. But other folks that we had coming through, a lot of them were really cool, including Christopher Guest and Harry Shearer and all those folks. Nice. What a time that was, man.
Yeah.
The 90s for like getting into it back then, and I'm not that old. I'm like
You're
39 right now, but I was like, it was 20 years ago, and there's a lot from there.
Now,
I warned you, I talked a lot.
It's okay that we want to hear all the stories. Now, if we're gonna look at Adam and summarize yourself where you are right now in 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
30 seconds. That's
gotta keep you on track.
I am in a period of rebuilding, rebranding, and regrowth for myself. I'm honing in on who I am as an artist and a musician, and I'm making very conscious efforts about picking projects that are important to me, both socially and artistically.
And what caused kind of the shift in your desire to kind of focus and rebrand?
There's been a couple of things. I think that the first one is, as you get a little older and make a little bit more money, it's sort of a luxury to be able to take that time. So, the universe has blessed me with that opportunity. I'm able to invest a little bit back in myself and my business, and I should have been doing that a long time ago. I mean, I always did. I always bought, new tools and stuff, but I'm investing in ways that actually cost me but pay off. They're planting these seeds, and I'm always one for planting seeds that take a long time to blossom. That's been my whole career, is these long periods, not the quick fix, not the easy money. It's been building these relationships over long periods of time. But right now, there's things that I know I really want to do, and I'm about to be 40. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to do any of them, but passion projects, making these things happen for myself, is the key. It's like turning inward by turning outward, by spending that time in service of others, by mentoring, by getting out and making those connections. It's helped my own goals.
Excellent. Yeah. Speaking of the long game and planting seeds, how have you been able to be patient enough to let the seeds grow and blossom? Because that's hard for many creatives to do.
Yeah. Richard Kraft posted something really wonderful today, and this speaks to my heart about learning to let stuff go. On Facebook, there's a forum called Perspective, and it talks all about the business of music, but it's very gritty. It gets down to the nuts and bolts of what it is and asks hard questions of folks, and he encourages the interaction, and it's a really wonderful place for musicians and composers and producers and non-musicians to understand the industry. What I've learned how to do over the course of my career is to create and let go. And I guess it's sort of like a spiritual concept that forces you to remove your ego from the end game. So you plant those seeds, you create that song, you work on this production, and then you set it free. And you don't worry about it. And it might come back and it might not. But the act of worrying causes more dissent for folks. Because it prevents you from moving forward and being creative again.
Yes. So
you got to push past it and say, well, look, if I don't get that gig, that's fine, because it's not always about me. See, the problem is people's egos get in the way. They go, what did I do? What did I do? What did I do? And sometimes maybe you do F it up. Maybe you do, and that's okay too, because you learn from those experiences. But understanding that the universe is a very complex place, and that folks make decisions that most time don't have to do with you. It's like when you go to the store and someone is really rude to you. Sometimes your first response is to be, well, I'm gonna jump down their throat because screw them, they cannot treat me that way. Sometimes it's warranted. But a lot of times they're having a bad day too. Yeah. And it's just not worth it. You don't want to be the cause of other people's hurt and pain. And so to assume that other people are causing that for you, I think is not necessarily a good way to run your business. I would sooner say, we're gonna create this cool thing and move on, see where it goes from there.
Excellent. Speaking of creativity, in your opinion, what's important for creative professionals, such as yourself or myself, to succeed in today's business environment?
That's such a complex question, and so I'll do my best to answer it. And this is something that could be this entire day, right? This whole awesome day we got planned. I think that the most important thing to understand is that folks are going to have to wear a lot of hats. Number one, you have to do more now than you've ever had to do before. The other thing that I think it's important for people to understand is that everybody else in this industry is a human being, and how you treat those people really reflects on your career in the future. The opportunities you give folks, the way that you let other people know that you're treating folks and the things that you believe in and stand for. I think people now more than ever are looking to see what kind of person you are. Because when I work with folks, when I work on projects, I'm selling the experience of working with me, not just the work I do. There's a lot of people that do really great work, a lot of folks. And so I have to really I have to work extra hard to be fun, to have a good time, to not be too, to not make it difficult, to be the easy button, to solve those 11th hour problems. And a lot of that includes being the producer, being the engineer, understanding, how to do just about everything in the studio, how to arrange, what musicians to call when I really need it, how to be the problem solver for the whole team. That's what being a producer is. How to manage budgets, how to manage personal budgets, how to not let that stuff get in the way of your creative life. Those are all really key things. And I think when people are just focused on man, I'm a great, rock producer and I'm going to make it huge as a rock. No, dude, you're going to make it huge because you produce rock, but then you play drums on this album, but then over here you're arranging, and maybe you're not going to get a credit on this other album, but it doesn't matter because that's going to lead to another opportunity. Yeah. So being able to humble yourself enough to say, I don't have to be the guy on everything. I could be the team player. Yeah. I could be maybe like a behind the scenes guy that you don't even know. Maybe I don't even get a credit. It doesn't matter because I'm working. And if you want to work in the business of music, then you treat it like a business, which means that sometimes you got to do stuff you don't really want to do. And that, again, is about removing the ego from the process.
Yeah. Preaching to the choir on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. You spoke about not letting personal finance get in the way of your creativity.
Yeah.
If you're going to give some people some advice on how to kind of do that, what advice would you give?
Yeah. I think that it gets, when I was younger and I had gear and in the 90s, we were all pirating stuff. And so it was a really rough time because there wasn't music gear available for up-and-coming performers, up-and-coming students, composers and stuff. You either took it or you just saved up and saved up and saved up. And when I started to make money, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm never gonna download another crack. I was in my mid-20s. I'm not gonna download crack software anymore. I'm gonna pay it back to everybody I'm gonna buy everything I've ever stolen at software. Yeah. And I did. And so, but investing that little bit back into my business helped me to look at how to delineate those expenditures and how to put money aside for my business and say, okay, I have X amount of money to spend this month, and I've got to live off of this. So what I started to do in my 20s is to just make spreadsheets of exactly what I needed to spend. And I would go and this was when I was teaching piano more than anything else. I would look and see exactly how much I have by the week. And it would be maybe I have $282 to get by this week. How am I going to do it? That's going to be food. That's going to be everything beyond what my expenditures are. Yeah. And it's funny because when you look at things like that, compartmentalize them, you actually feel like you have a lot more to go with. Because when you don't know what you have, and this is really just a very simple thing to do, just write down what you're spending every month, what you absolutely need to get by on. When you write it down, you realize you can get by on a lot less than you think you can. But when you frivolously spend money on things that you don't need for your business, you don't necessarily need the newest, hottest string libraries. You don't got to buy 8,000 kick drums. Look at almost every record that's put out in hip hop in the past 10 years. It's been 3 drum machines, and they're going back to stuff from the early 80s too, like the Oberheim stuff, stuff that was just the Boss, Roland Boss, all that stuff. It's good. Figure out how to make it work for you because your creativity will push past any budgetary limitation. Yeah. And now anybody that has a MacBook has GarageBand. You can do records on that thing.
You can.
And if you're good enough creatively, you don't have to buy everything. So the budgeting is key. Yeah. And just simply writing stuff down, writing it down, seeing what it looks like on paper. That really helps.
Yeah, great advice. Now you've had a lot of landmarks in your career so far. Golden Globe win, Grammy.
We won the album.
Yeah, the album.
Yeah.
Your Oscar nomination. Yeah. If you're gonna pick maybe one turning point for your career so far, what comes to mind?
This is a long story. I will say though, so those projects, it's funny because So the nominations don't come to my name, they come to the project name. And to me, that still feels like a win, right? Like if you produce something that wins the Grammy, that is about, again, removing your ego from, you don't go, hey man, my name wasn't on that award. I get a certificate, not a statue. That's, who cares? It's like you did something that touched people, and that Greatest Showman project touched a lot of folks, and it meant a lot to a lot of people. So, turning point in my career. How much time we got left?
We got a little time.
All right, we got a little. So I'll make it. So my brother-in-law, Todd Bozon, God rest his soul, he passed away last week, cancer, and
sorry to hear that.
And he, when I was going through a rough period in my life, and he was a music supervisor, I never wanted to bother him for connections and work and stuff, but he would include me on projects here and there. We did maybe 10 films over the past 8-9 years together, where he said, hey, there's this thing I need, can you do it? Yes, I'll solve that problem for you. Great, I did it, it was a thing. Todd had said over lunch one day, if I could introduce you to one person, who would it be? And he knows everybody, like John Debney's his friend, like this dude knows everybody, right? Like he hangs out with Money Mark, Quincy Jones, like he knows everybody. So I said, I want to meet Chris Leonard. And he said, well, Chris is a great friend of mine, but why Chris? And I said, well, because I have some mutual friends with Chris. And so I was thinking, like, I know the kind of music Chris does. I love his music. And with our mutual friends, that's an instant warm market. We'll have a lot to connect on. I think that might be a good place for me to sort of pivot from. But within a week, I had an email from Chris's assistant, and she said, come have coffee with Chris. Chris and I met. We hit it off right away. We had tons more in common than I even knew. And Chris has sort of become like a big brother, like an advisor. And also, he's one of the coolest human beings like on the planet. He does so much for Educate Music LA, and he does a lot of other charity work, and he helps young kids, and he mentors, and he has programs that he's created that are philanthropic. Anyways, long story short, we had done a little project, and then he goes, hey, I've got these 2 songwriters coming in from New York. I don't know who they are. We have the same agent, but they've had some success. Will you come in and just like move in for the week and sort of babysit them, is actually the words he used. He's like, I don't know what they're gonna want you to do. And he said, just bring your studio. So I did. And it ended up being Justin Paul and Benj Pasek and Paul.
Okay.
And this was before they had done anything. This was 2015. La La Land, they hadn't even started working on that yet. We were working on this other film for Sony that still hasn't seen the light of day, and I produced it with them for a week, and we became great friends, and we had a good time in the studio, and I didn't know I was going to be producing and arranging, but that's ultimately what I ended up doing. And that relationship with Justin and Benj ended up changing sort of the trajectory of the people that I knew, but also Chris Leonard's did, because through Chris I met some other really wonderful music supervisors that my brother-in-law also knew. And then Justin and Benj brought me on to Showman, sort of, and we'll tell that story later, but that's another long story. It's sort of a fascinating one. But meeting them really sort of changed the trajectory. But it was because I asked, and a lot of times you forget to ask because you don't want to impose on people. Most of us don't want to. But sometimes there's times in your life when you need to ask. So you save those asks for when it's really important. And then people know. If you're coming to me, if someone comes to me for help, I always try to help them, especially if I've got a great personal relationship with them, because I know how hard it is to ask for help.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. So anyways.
Great. Why do you love what you do?
Oh man, it's just, there's so many facets to being a creative person. I love that now. There's some things that I love about it now that are different than what I loved about it when I was younger. I love now that our company, my company Moonwalk Audio, my partner Alex and I, Alex is up in Oakland and they do the sound design and I do the music. We are giving opportunities to folks that wouldn't have opportunities. POC, LGBTQ community, female composers. That's sort of how we live our business. Every project we work on, we're looking for someone that hasn't had an opportunity. We throw them a minute of music to do. A lot of times we're vetting them to see, well, can this person work with us on a regular basis? Sometimes it's no, but we've met some great people that way, especially females, and that, just people overlook a lot of other folks, and that to us is a terrible thing. So I love now that we're able to give opportunities to folks that haven't had those opportunities. I joke with Alex all the time. Alex being a part of the LGBTQ community and me being everyday American white dude. It's like, I want to be the whitest guy that we work with. Like, I want to be the most like generic American dude because I've had opportunities, now I can give them to other people. And I love doing that. I love meeting interesting, new, wonderful, creative, talented people every day that have something to offer above and beyond just the music they create. I love that I'm challenged on a daily basis. I love that I always say yes to things, even if I don't know if I can do it, because it's made me a better, more humble musician. You know, I love that my kids are at home with me, so I can work at home in my garage where my studio is, and they can pop in and say, hey. You know, like there's a lot of social benefits that far outweigh. But you know, one of my favorite things to do also is to observe, and I love to observe my colleagues, and I love to be inspired by them, and I love that they're all doing wonderful things also that set examples for me, both socially and in the arts, and I hope that we all continue in that spirit.
Continuing with the love theme, what is your top 3 favorite video games?
Oh man, you know what? It's you. So I just smashed Red Dead Redemption 2, and that game, what a story. My heart, man, I was in tears a couple of times. I'll tell you, that story, the things that games are doing with storytelling in 2019, amazing. Just absolutely stunning. So that Horizon Zero Dawn is one of my top games ever. Like, I want to go back to that. I was talking to my buddy yesterday. He's like, I started it over because I wanted to play it again because I'm like, yes, that story is so good. Yes. Oh man, there's what else have I played that, you know, Skyrim, I've got a soft spot in my heart for Skyrim. World of Warcraft, I've got a soft spot in my heart for that, just because the best man at my wedding and one of my best friends, Jason Hayes, wrote that music, and early on in my video game career, he was a big influence for me. He gave me a lead into my very first video game gig in 2016, and you know, I love a lot of indie storytelling games too. Life is Strange. I love games with a strong female protagonist, so I can share that with my daughters, so they can play. My kids are really into indie games, so they turn me on to some stuff too. Yeah. But I like games with a message also. I like games that challenge social boundaries. I like games that leave you thinking, that put you in tears, that take you on a journey. Yeah, I play like God of War. I like that too. The relationship between father and son. That was it's a very transparent story, and that's what you're all left with. It's like how the father interacts with his son. So yeah,
good. You're inspiring me to get back and start to play.
Do it.
More. I remember I grew up in the days like Ultima 1, 2, and 3. You know.
Oh yeah, Zork.
Commodore 128, so 164. So I'm a little older than you, but I can relate.
Amiga was my first jam, and I started playing video games when I was 4 or 5, and that's like not many other folks were doing that back then. No. You know, but I played a lot of tabletop role-playing games. I won't get into that. I'm like as nerdy as it comes.
That's okay. We love nerds. On the flip side, what is something that scares you?
I think so. When you say that, my gut just like, what scares me? Well, first of all, losing my kids, like that's it. Like, this is a life question, right? Like, losing my kids. Also, becoming irrelevant. Becoming irrelevant scares me. I work really hard to stay on my game. I work really hard to hustle every day, to send emails every day. Like this networking thing, and in fact, mentoring and speaking has led me to better gigs than anything else I've done. So staying relevant. Yeah. My assistant, he's 26, he went to Cal State Fullerton, got his master's here. Awesome. He's gonna pop by today to check out the talk. He's a great guy. One of my best friends. He spends Christmas with us every year. He's been working for me for almost 5 years. He helps kind of keep me in the music game. I still listen. I mean, like, you know, listening to stuff. I listen all the time. I listen to get ideas. I listen to hear what my friends and colleagues are doing. I listen to make sure that I'm on point. That's tricky, you know. I don't fear not having work. I think I've always sort of had something to do. Whether I was teaching piano, I've always been able to make my own path. And I do it with a lot of joy, and so I tend to attract folks that like to do that, live in joy, you know. But I think the things I really fear are like inward things, you know. Yeah.
Now, your industry, composing, music, arranging, producing for video games, very crowded.
Yeah.
What do you do to distinguish yourself and rise above all the noise and competition?
The most important thing I do is show up, be seen, go to everything. I go to everything I can. I reach out to people on a daily basis, people that I don't think would, necessarily talk to me. Through Greatest Showman, I got to connect with Greg Wells, who was he produced Katy Perry, Pink, a bunch of really awesome people, made some great records, Mika, just really wonderful records. And we were talking on Instagram, which is such a super weird way to connect with people these days.
We do it now.
But, we'd been talking, and after a while, I'm like, can we just have lunch? He goes, I'd love to meet you. So he sent me his cell, and I sent him a couple texts, and in March, we're going to go and hang out. To rise above the noise, you have to be heard, and the only way to be heard is to show up. You got to keep showing up. I go to the Game Developer Conference every year, GDC.
Oh, nice.
And I very early on in my career, I was sneaking into parties that I shouldn't have been at, and meeting people and offering them ideas and asking them how to be a part of what they're doing. Be a part of is the important part. Be a part of the team, because if people think you're self-serving, then they don't want to be around that. It's like that ego it puts people off. It's like the douchey guy in the bar that everybody hates, It's like he doesn't know he's a big dick, but he's a jerk. So being a part of the team means that you're in and of service to the project and not yourself, and that's important. So I would go and I'd meet people, and I met a lot of really interesting people, and you offer them ideas, maybe one idea, or you ask them for another meeting, or try to get their contact information. I never ask for business cards because nobody does that in 2019 really. I mean, I have one, but it's
right.
When people ask him oh, you don't know, but here's my awesome card. And that's important. It's just last man standing, last human standing, last person, last woman standing. You go to these things and you see the same people year after year, but then after a while, some people drop off. And once they drop off, they're out. They're out of the game. You just got to be there. You got to be there.
For people who struggle with networking, what's a couple of tips you would give them to help them improve or understand the importance of networking?
You're not selling anything. You're not. You're just making friends. And if you have a hard time making friends in normal life, you're gonna have a hard time networking. I mean, that is the truth bus that just drove by.
Real talk.
If you are awkward as a human being, that's okay. Nobody minds awkward folks. No one minds. It's endearing. But if you're a nice person, if you're a nice human being, and you have something to talk about, and you have something to offer, and everybody does, you just got to figure out what it is that you have to offer that's not the same as somebody else, and that's how you solve other people's problems. But showing up and hanging out. I tell my folks, I have a lot of LDS friends, Mormon friends, because of where I live and also where I grew up, and then also in the game industry. There's a lot of Mormon kids that come up that are nervous about going to these conferences because there's alcohol involved. And there's parties, and it's like, well, what do I do? How do I fit into that? Well, you just pick up the soda water, put a lime in it, and pretend like you're having a vodka soda. No one's gonna ask you what's in your drink. But if you appear to be a part of the crowd, if you appear to be going with the flow, then it's easy to network. It's easy to talk to people. Don't be shy. I mean, it is hard to get out of your shell. It's hard to walk up to someone and say, hey, but never start with a what do you do line.
Yeah.
You figure out hey, this is, a cool party. Or, oh my gosh, I love this band. Or, hey, that's a great shirt. It's about connecting with the human being, not trying to get that gig from them. Because there's 100 other people that are way better than you, that have better clothes, better hair, that are much more attractive, that maybe they've been working with for many years. So what are you gonna do to talk to them? How are you gonna just talk? You're just gonna be yourself. And if you connect, great. If you don't, that's not the gig for you.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got friends. Nobody doesn't have friends. There's even those of us that have just a couple friends.
Right.
It's a thing. So yeah.
Great answer. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Oh man, I think that there's a lot of failures. There's a ton. It's every time you don't get that gig. It's every time you invest. So this past year, because it's a year of rebirth and rebuilding for me, I got a new agent, and they've inspired me, and they've actually put me out for some really great gigs. And so I've got to demo for some Disney animated stuff and some films, and I've spent a lot of money on those demos. and the demos are so good. I feel like, oh, I'm going to totally get this, and you don't get it, but you got to let that go, right? You got to let it go when you don't, and it feels like a failure, but it's not, because again, you don't know why they're choosing. But I worked for this company for like 8 years and had a lot of issues with them, and it sort of crashed and burned, and I had to burn that bridge. But you learn a lot about what kind of person you are when something happens that's negative in your life. Like, you learn how to be a little more guarded about certain things. You also learn that there's other people that come out of the woodwork when you fail that say, hey buddy, I failed too, and it hurt, and it's okay to be down. It's okay to suck. It's okay to like not have money for a while. It's okay to like, worry about not paying your mortgage or your rent, because everybody does that. This is normal human being stuff. And I think that the trick is to learn how to function and not to let those things destroy you, because when it destroys you, that's when you're out of the industry. That's when you get pushed out because you can't move past it. It's a sad thing, but it happens to a lot of people. They get depressed and they just decide they can't do it. And so my advice would be, because social media is such a powerful tool, that when you see people that are experiencing that, you have to reach out to them. You have to help be their support system, especially folks that are close to you. Offer a phone call, even if they're your superiors, or what you're considering like more advanced than you in wherever they are in life, because we're still all people, and we still need other people to help us out. Like, this is a very human industry, and people forget about that, especially when you're trying to get that goal. You're trying to get that next gig. You think, well, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna be the hottest next thing. Like my X, Y, and Z is better than that. Like, that doesn't matter, man. It's about the friends you make. They're the ones that are going to keep you up when things get hard.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really important. Continuing on, with more success comes more critics, or haters as we call them.
Yeah.
How do you handle the haters?
I don't think about it much. There's always going to be people that are jealous of what you do, no matter how nice of a person you are. And I read a quote, what was it the other day, that says, no matter the story that you're telling or the story you're living, you're always the villain in somebody else's. And that is true. And while it's super sexy to be like Thanos, like, right? In fact, Thanos was the picture in this quote. And I'm like, yo, Thanos is not the hero in anybody's story. Like, what is this? Like, that's my, how can he not be the villain? But, to somebody, there's always somebody's hero that's a bad guy. And that's true too. I don't know, man. Critics are something where I go, okay, well, they have a reason why they don't like something. And I don't worry about it, because I'm not doing this gig to please other people. I'm doing this gig because I can't not do it. I will tell you, though, I think it's very funny that, so I was blessed to be able to replace the Today Show theme song a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that mission theme was way better than my theme. John Williams' theme is way better. Now, is it because John Williams is a better composer than me? Yes, John Williams is a better. I'm not gonna. There's in no world am I thinking that I'm. No. John Williams is the master of that kind of work. But could he do that thing that I did? I don't think he could have, because it's a different style and it's not his style. He's got his own thing. But that wasn't the point. They were rebranding that TV network, and they were looking for a new thing. And they told me a very specific guideline by which I had to write. And I met their guideline. I did it on time, under budget, and with exceptional quality. Cool. And that's what they were looking for. And the network has kept it since then, and they love it. I got a lot of mail where people were like, how dare you do this to John Williams? I'm like, yo, first of all, I didn't do anything to John Williams. I'm sure he's not worried about that $5,000 gig that I just got to replace that theme, by which, by the way, zero royalties, because it was a buyout on an arrangement of the da-na-na. Once you put that NBC3 notes in there, they own it. Yeah. You do not own that. Yeah. So you just say, look, John Williams wrote a better theme. I'm not going to lie. But I did what I was asked to do. Yeah. And I have a relationship with them now. And that's an important thing. So
that makes it all worth it.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so the darkest time of my life it relates back to when I had a turning point in my career that I mentioned earlier, where my brother-in-law gave me that nice little introduction to Leonard's. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I was still teaching piano. This was 2013. It wasn't that long ago.
5.5 years ago.
But since then, I've made huge strides in my career, because I've changed the way that I look at what I do. Instead of it being just like work, money, it's it's network relationships, building and vision, and then money comes later. Passion is so important, and passion projects are so important too. You make good money doing work for other people. You make great money when you own it. My royalty checks sometimes are amazing, sometimes they're terrible. But when I own something and I can earn on that thing, it's like, oh, that's what I want. I will forego money up front for royalties later. I'll tell you a little bit later. Maybe we can talk later about this Star Wars Galaxy Edge project I've done for Disney. And I've taken a hit on it up front, knowing that stuff is going to play in the park for 20 years, royalties. That's what I want. Yes. And I want that relationship. And I want people to be moved. I mean, that's like what I'm passionate about, is that part of music. So it was a rough time for me, 2013, when that gig when I decided to burn that bridge. It was an 8-year gig that was like my bread and butter gig. And I was depressed and I was worried. And I thought I don't know where I'm going to go from here.
Right.
And so that's when I asked for help. And that's why I say you save those for when it really matters. Yeah. And that time it mattered.
It worked out for you. How were you able to make such a mindset shift from where you were to kind of where you are right now?
Sometimes when you fall, I think sometimes when you're in a dark place, you're forced to.
Yes.
Also, character is always, like, my heart's always been what it is. Maturity changes you. I was like 30 in my mid-20s and very early 30s when things started to really go south there. And my mindset put me in a place where I was like, what do I really want? Like, what makes me happy? And I started to focus on those things. And I think that attracts the right energy.
Yes.
Like, the universe goes, this guy, like, he wants to do this, but he's making it happen. We're going to give him a little boost. And that seems to always be the case. I don't care if you're religious, spiritual, you believe in God, or you worship a pot of daisies. Like, if you put that energy, that universal energy into something, like, people notice.
Yes.
They see that. So.
Now, if I was to tell you that I have Dave Matthews outside this door, and he's going to walk in, you get to ask him 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah.
What questions would you ask Dave Matthews?
Amani, I'm so impressed by your research, my friend.
Thank you.
Dave Matthews happens to be one of my favorite bands. So Jeff Coffin, the saxophone player from Dave Matthews Band, records for us when we go to Nashville. So I've had an opportunity to work with him on multiple occasions. And it wasn't until the 3rd time we were in the studio that I was like, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Jeff Coffin. I'm a big fan, man. Dave Matthews is my favorite band ever. I just wanted you to know that every time you're here, I totally geek out and I've never asked for a selfie. Can we get one? And he's like, because the first time I met him, he was like, let's go have whiskey after this session. And like, I sort of froze up. Like, I don't get I've met a lot of celebrities. I don't get stage fright or, starstruck. I just asked Dave to jam. I would just ask him to jam. There's no questions. I mean, his music is very transparent, and I wouldn't want to impose any strong personal questions on him. I would just be like, hey, can I have an hour? Can we just like play together? That would make my whole life.
Cool. Now say Dave Matthews leaves, and then in walks the Sherman brothers. What would you ask them?
I would. The Sherman brothers are interesting to me because they never got along. They did, but brotherly love, and there's that whole thing. And Richard, he still has a strong relationship with our agency. So we sort of are in the same pool of folks that we know. I would love to meet him one day. I guess I would be curious because I love my Disney writing gig so much. And because I write so many songs for Disney, especially in the past 4 years, it's been like almost 20 songs I've written in the past 4 years for Disney. I would want to know why they would do that. Like, why did they focus on that? Because for me, I know why. Because I want a legacy of things that my kids can listen to and be proud of. And to me, like, that's part of it. Also, Disney has done so much for me in my life, and I'm so passionate about what they do for other folks, and I want to be a part of that. The good parts of it, business is business. There's a lot of bad things about business, but I'd want to know why Disney, and like, I'd probably ask them a lot of the same things you're asking me, but Yeah, I don't know. The Sherman Brothers, man, they have this magical thing. And I understand this being a songwriter. I understand that you ask somebody a question about their work and it's sort of hard to get a real answer. So I just want to know about the things that inspire them.
Right.
You know, what they're listening to now.
Okay.
If they listen to music, if they still love what they do.
Yeah.
They had 60-year career, something like that.
Very
It's
long.
beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
Speaking of inspiration, who was the most influential person for you growing up?
That's a good question. So I think my grandfather and my dad. I learned a lot. My dad's a great businessman. He's a great business. He coached me, and too. When I had that sort of turning point in my life, my dad gave me a lot of business coaching. He might show up today. He said he might come by and watch the talk. And he gave me a lot of advice. Told me some things that I remember we got in this terrible fight once when I was a teenager, and my dad says, let people call you any name they want, but don't let them call you a liar. That's really that's always stuck with me, right? Don't be a liar. Have integrity. Do everything you do with unbridled compassion for other folks too, and passion, and then and do it honestly for yourself and for others. And I think that's part of what not being called a liar is you don't want to know you're lying to yourself. And that was part of my change in trajectory too, is I wanted to be honest with who I was and what I do, Yeah. Can't be good at everything.
Nope, unfortunately. But what do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
Yeah. So I've made a very good career out of working with songwriters and producing folks. Songwriting has been something that for in this specific style, for animated stuff and for Disney type stuff, and that's something that's a really compartmentalized thing that I can do, that I've tried to kind of market to other folks. So storytelling through songs, sometimes musical stuff, but not really necessarily musical stuff all the time. But creating the sound of that world that the game or that the project lives in, creating the source music that exists in that world that characters in the game might hear or in the world might hear, and that. So being a composer that produces has given me a lot of opportunities, because those are the Disney gigs. You're a composer, you write for orchestra, but you can produce pop music too. Well, then come take all these gigs, because nobody's doing those, right. Except for just a few people. And that's how Pascal and Paul keep me busy. And they've introduced me to some wonderful people that they've worked with, that I've worked with. Alan Zachary, Michael Weiner, they're great songwriters, do a lot of TV stuff, and I fit that mold for them too. The stuff I've done with Alan Menken, I fit that mold. The stuff I've done with Chris Leonard, I fit that mold. Sausage Party that we did, that was exactly that kind of thing, pop, but also orchestra. And also that I've done a lot of stage and theater, so I know how to direct voice actors, and I can do a lot of the character voices in VO. Disney tells me that the reason why I get so many of those demos that I submit on is because I'm producing the demos to sound like they're the record. And I don't skimp. I don't do anything small when it comes to that. Every demo I do, it's 150% every time. I'm paying for musicians. I'm spending days on this thing, making sure it sounds right. I'm bouncing it off my colleagues that are good at what they do. I don't, when I get a song, and God bless them because they're masters, when Justin Paul and when Alan Menken send me music, it's them playing, Alan will play he'll record into Logic and play the piano part. I should show you, I've got notes later I can show you from Justin Paul where it's him going, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna sound terrible, but here's my song. And he plays it on guitar and sings it into his iPhone. And it's a genius song, but that's how I get it. But he's sort of at the place where he knows he doesn't have to produce.
Right.
He can hand it to me and I'll make it sound good. But when I did Sherman, it was him in it, he played it for me in the room and on piano and sang. And I went from there. And then I played it and I replayed it into Logic or whatever and to produce around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I produce everything out because I know that that's who my competition is. Ultimately, the gigs that I want, I'm competing with folks I work with, who I adore, whose music I just absolutely am enamored by.
Yeah.
I mean, Alan Menken is the voice of Disney, and when you hear his work, you go, wow, between him and the Sherman Brothers, how could you ever write anything better? But you got to try, right? Pascal and Paul are the hottest songwriters in America currently. They're the youngest up and coming theater songwriters, right? I mean, pop. There's a bunch of other folks that I'm really into, that songwriter wise. But as far as American style theater, Broadway, it's Pascal and Paul.
Excellent.
And so, yeah.
Great. Marie, the quote you said before, and get you to kind of say why it resonates with you now. You said your project should serve one of three things: your soul, your pocketbook, or your career.
Yeah, that's sort of something I learned from Chris Leonard's. I think Chris Leonard's. That's how it is, man. That's all about deciding what you're going to invest in yourself. If you're going to invest in yourself, great. You know, that's going to serve your soul. I have passion projects now, musical that I wrote, and this animation thing that we're sort of doing, that we're just self-funding and trying out, and then I have, you know, the gigs that pay me very well. I still do a lot of casual game work, which I love doing it. I still really love that work. And I have great relationships with these companies, and they give me a lot of constant flow. I do a lot of casino games. I mean, these are all different ways that I've managed to diversify my income, because you can't do it just doing one thing. And we've talked about some stuff that I'm very proud of. I'm actually very proud of all of it, because it's all made me what I am today and given me the resources to be able to do what I want to do. But the casual game stuff, it makes me a pretty good amount of money. Yeah. But you know, no one's going, oh my gosh, that Willy Wonka slot machine is life changing. No, you don't change life, but it entertains folks. And believe it or not, like, those casual game markets are massive. These companies are making a ton of money. I know, because they pay me well. And I see what their revenue looks like. I see what their gross looks like. So yeah, that's just all about diversification. That would serve the pocketbook. You know, I think that there's gigs that you do, like the gig I did for Richard Kraft this year, where we did the Hollywood Bowl, Beauty and the Beast, and I brought that score, so you can show, if there's any folks that are interested later to see that score, let me know. But I did a new arrangement of a tune that Alan Menken wrote for the new Beauty and the Beast movie, sung by the very talented and wonderful human being Anthony Evans, who's a gospel singer, but he's also, like, he was the least known person in that Hollywood Bowl show. And I was told later, Menken told me that was vindicated by my arrangement of that was performed live, and that meant so much to me. And I got to work with Michael Cause, and I got to work with, like, you know, Tay Diggs, and like just some really incredible folks that blew me away. Rebel Wilson, like, we did this big show at the Bowl, and I didn't get paid for that. I spent money. It cost me $1,800 for the Airbnb in Hollywood that week, and then I paid some other musicians to be there out of my own pocketbook because they didn't have it, and I wanted a guitar, and they wouldn't pay for a guitarist because they were out of money. But also the music supervisors on that, Julie Michaels and Julianne Jordan, like, Julianne Jordan did all the Pitch Perfect films, and she did Trolls and a bunch of other stuff, and Julian Michaels is her business partner, and also Chris Leonard's his manager. So it's a very small world of folks that you're working with here. Composer Chris Bacon did an arrangement, so he was there. I got to work with Peter Rotter, and I got really in with Express Music and Jasper Randall, who's a vocal contractor, so now I have a relationship with him. So all that giving that I did served my career. I made more connections there, spending that money. That was like a conference for me. And it was good money that I invested. So you got to pick and choose those, but yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Excellent example. Now, when you were 21, you were here, Anaheim, working away, correct?
Yeah. I was a little younger. I was like 19, working at Disneyland.
Where were you when you were 21?
So by the time I was 21, I was teaching piano full time. I had just left working for CJ Vanston at the Treehouse, and I was producing folks out of my apartment in Newport Beach, right by UCI, and teaching piano.
So we're going to go to Newport Beach.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to 21-year-old Adam.
Yeah.
And give him some advice based on what you know now.
Yeah. You know, I think about this a lot, and I think I would compassionately remind myself or encourage myself to not worry so much about money, to not take all those gigs that are money oriented, to really focus on the things that serve your soul and to serve others. I had written a musical at that time, and that was such a wonderful experience for me, and it took me this long to get back to it. It took me 15 years to get back to my second musical that right now I've already done some animation tests on, and I'm recording this cast album, and I'm very proud of the script, and I really love the story, and it's moved people, and it's, you know, that's what I want to do. I would tell myself that you don't have to take every gig. It's okay. Save money. I would tell myself to save money, because I mean, we had some pretty crappy investments that really destroyed us financially for a while, and I would say just save.
Yeah.
Because you never know when you need it. But you know, had I saved more money, I would have been able to do more passion projects younger. So,
True.
So that was a rut I put myself in.
What is the one lesson in life you feel took you the longest to learn?
Longest? Boy, that's a tricky question. The longest to learn. I think that living in the service of others is, and I guess I've always tried to do it, but I've never made it really an active business model of mine to live in service. I've just sort of done it, but when I've spoken up about it more, it's made more of an impact with other folks, and I'll keep doing that. Also, like this whole idea about reinvesting in your own passion projects is so key to your mental state and mental well-being. It doesn't matter if you're not getting paid. You got to do stuff that you're proud of too.
Agree 100%. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ.
Oh, I love that.
What's your sentence?
So for us in my business and my business partner, it's been integrity, opportunity, and service. Those have been the three things that we've really focused on, is making sure that the inside version of you matches the outside version of you. And to remember that, like I said before, that these are other human beings that you're working with.
Yeah. Brilliant. What is one new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
Oh my gosh. So this is something that Alex, my business partner, kicks my ass on all the time. And it's logging my accounting, just making sure that we keep track of what we're spending, because we're an S Corp, and this is all new for me too, being an S Corp. So logging that, and then project calendars. I use Asana, and having a project calendar has been key for us. We've been a little lazy in 2019 because we're sort of like restructuring a little bit with our S Corp and stuff like that. But putting stuff on the project calendar, assigning stuff to our subcontractors that do like guitar work and drum work for us, and putting it on the calendar makes a huge difference. And that reminds me, I got to update all that this week too, because we got a bunch of stuff starting. So.
Note to self.
Right, yeah.
Now, we're big readers on the show. You brought us a book already.
Yeah.
Tell us also if there's 1, 2, or 3 books you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and read them immediately. What books would you recommend?
Oh boy. Every Harry Potter book ever, first of all. If you haven't read those, you gotta read Harry Potter.
Goblet of Fire is my favorite.
I love Goblet of Fire. It's so exciting. And also like Douglas Adams. I love all his books too. But as far as like business books and things that might help, there's I think Stephanie Palmer wrote a book called Good in a Room. It's about 250 pages.
Okay.
It talks about networking, and it talks about my takeaway from that was that, and this is a really important one, is that every time you have a meeting with someone, you get one request, and just one request. And that request could be either their contact information, another meeting. It could be for them to introduce you to somebody, something like that. And that book really sort of sets your headspace and builds confidence for networking. It's a good one. There's also a book called, I think it's called The Business of Music. And I forgot who that author was, but I'll find it later. You can put it maybe in the show notes. Yeah, and it talks about really logistical things like contract negotiation, why you need a lawyer, why you should, how to have a manager, like why you need one. It's a very technical book. And then so you want to become a media composer. There's so many great anecdotes in there. I'm excited for you to read them. Let me know what you think when you thumb through it. This is the kind of book you can leave to like in your studio when you're like chilling and you're like, hey, I got 5 minutes. Right. What's this story? Flip to a random one. Oh, here's Tom Geyer. There's 5 questions for Tom, and you read it. And it's like 10 pages or 6 pages, and it takes you a minute. And maybe you're inspired.
I love it. So. Can't wait. Thank you for that gift. I appreciate it. Now, you grew up. Are you a baseball fan? Anaheim Angels?
No. You know what? I never was into any sports.
No sport.
And I did. I love going to the gym. I love my CrossFit workouts. I studied martial arts for many years, but I've always been like hands-on. Watching sports, I just never did. My son, he'll watch football, basketball. You put it on for some reason. He just like watch. He doesn't even know anything about it. I'm like kind of feeling guilty. Maybe I should teach you how to learn how to play. But it's funny because all my friends in my neighborhood, they love football, and they've got their fantasy football leagues, and they do this thing, and they watch all the basketball sports. My brother-in-law, my sister's husband is a huge basketball fan. He goes to March Madness every year to watch. So I hang out with him and I eat.
Okay, let's say this. Let's say you're going to a gaming conference and they're introducing Adam coming up to the stage.
Yeah.
What song is playing as your walk-up song?
Oh, what song is playing? Oh no, I don't. You know what? That's such a funny thing. Usually it's been like whatever project I've worked on that year.
It could
But
be any song in the world.
what song to me? You know, this is a hard question, Amani. I should have read this one before because
I don't listen. I just put the baseball question.
Okay. So, what song have I been listening to a lot lately? I've been listening to a lot of John Mayer and Maggie Rogers lately, and so maybe something like that. You know, I go back to a lot of like Disney stuff too. So it would probably be something from the parks that I've written, because I think when you do those things, they play one of your songs, like not somebody else's, so it wouldn't be somebody else's song. I guess it would have to be something that I've worked on.
Not necessarily. It could be a John Mayer song if you
could
want.
be a John Mayer song, yeah. Still Feel Like Your Man is a pretty rad song. This is the stuff I listen to. I mean, like, what's the conference? They're gonna play something like that's like what is about me? I don't know if I have one song that's about me. Part of that is like my taste in music is so diverse. Like I love everything. So, like, I don't know.
We'll put that one. The song you just mentioned. We'll put that one on.
Yeah, Still Feel Like Your Man.
There you go.
I don't know. That's a good one. Are you really gonna do that one?
Yes.
It's like, oh no, I didn't know this was research. I gotta give you something a little less dorky.
We'll put that on today. I'll put that in the episode.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a good one.
All right. So before we ask you the final question, so thank you for taking time. First of all, come to Fullerton, spend the whole day with us. Yeah. Sit down with me early in the morning and chat. I mean, it's been an amazing conversation. I just met you, but I feel like I know you so well now.
Hey, that's the point, right?
Exactly. I can't wait to keep in touch. And
cool.
You do amazing work, so continue to inspire us.
I will try.
We always let other guests kind of take us home with any last minute words of wisdom. So I'll say thank you again and take us home.
Yeah, man. As you all get further in your career and you start to make money in all the many ways in which you're all going to have to make money, because you are going to have to do it in lots of different ways, remember to afford opportunities to other folks that don't get them. We live in a time now where it's more important than ever to remember that inclusivity is sort of the key to business and also to life, and affording those opportunities to folks will make the difference in your heart and also in the work that comes to in the future. If people see you as a good person that you are, and you remember to not think about yourself for 2 minutes, then I think you'll have a real long career.
Amen. Thank you.